which event uh, model uses, which event model uses to identify the changes, which event model uses to identify the changes. So for this we need to answer that model uses life cycle hook ng on changes ng on changes ng on changes. So it uses the life cycle hook ng on changes and simple changes will provide will provide will provide information about the previous value. So previous and current value. So which event model uses to identify the changes? Actually, model uses the life cycle hook event called ng on changes. On ng on changes, it will identify those changes. So which object contains information about the changes? Then you can say simple changes. That means another point is which object contains information about changes. So for that the answer is simple changes. So simple changes object provide information about previous and current value. These are some regularly asked questions in interviews for experienced people. Generally, for fresher, they may not go into, because in Angular, everything is context based. Context based means we exactly know what interviewer can ask us questions. We know the questions what he can ask. So in that case, there are certain questions which we regularly encounter in interviews. We can exactly tell what he can ask sometimes. So until or unless you are showing vast experience, then he asks about your project. In your project, why you used those, where you used those type of questions will come. But 90% of Angular interviews are context based only. That means we exactly know what they are going to ask us, some questions. If we perfectly understand them and can answer them, know about them, then 80% of interview we can crack. So rest depends on how in-depth he asks us relative to the projects, right? What projects we mentioned and how the roles and responsibilities we configured. But this life cycle related, so these events are very regularly asked. So we need to understand what happens on init, on changes, and on destroy. Later, when we implement services and all, we will use these events in real world applications now. We just understood how they work in the background. So this example I will post you. So just to practice and understand how it is working. But this is not the real world example. So we need to create some examples for handling these situations that I will show you when we are working with the other services and components. So this is the basic component cycle, various phases of component cycle. Now we will use them in our examples, this component cycle. Now with this we complete the concept of components, working with components. So now we can go into another important concept, that is Angular pipes, Angular services, and Angular routing. These are the points we need to understand. Angular pipes, Angular services, and Angular routing, how this entire process works. These are the major options. So what are pipes and how to configure and use the pipes, that we will see in the next session, right? So Monday, we will start with a new concept in Angular, that is Angular pipes. Now pipes services are simple options. We can fastly handle them. In services, after services and routing, then important part comes integrating with server side technologies, accessing data from APIs and services, interacting with the data in our Angular application. That complete end-to-end scenario we have to learn. That's where important part is, where you will learn about RxJS and all, right? Initially, this is about components. Now, in the next session, we will discuss about Angular pipes. How do we use the pipes, what they are, and how to work with them. Some changes happened in Angular 9. Some new pipes are introduced. We have to learn about them, right? So then Monday, we will discuss about this, right? This example I will upload into the class, right? So that you can get it from there. Right. First change is binding your property. First change is binding your property, right? Binding is the first change that it identifies, right? Binding the property value is first change. After binding, you are making changes. That is the second change. Binding is the first change. So on changes means it binds and identifies the changes. Two things it will do. And binding the data is identified as the first change. Understood? Is binding successfully happened? That is tomorrow we are not having animations. We are planning for a separate session on that, right? I will let you know. Angular animation tomorrow not there. So we are planning for a separate timing for that. I will let you know. Okay. You practice once because in the initial it looks little confusion, right? If you feel any difficulty in that, I will explain. So with some other examples in the next level. Okay. Okay.